Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. I hope you're having a great day. You're listening to the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett. Today's episode is one that's super exciting. I know I say that a lot, but I am super excited about this because this is one that a lot of people are fearful of talking. Public speaking is said to be one of the number one fears people have. And I know that whenever I was growing up, if I had to do public speaking, I don't know, I would rather be shot in the foot. I don't know, buried alive in a casket with snakes and spiders rather than public speaking. Today we have Ethan Becker on the show. He discovered at a very young age that he knew how to harness the power of speech. And he knew that was going to be powerful. And if he could do that, he'd be the most powerful person in the room. He went on to be the youngest, highest paid marketing exec at a very large corporate company, and then decided to go off on his own. Today, celebrity icons and major business leaders hire Ethan to control their fear of speaking, command greater attention, and close larger deals. Even the White House. That's really cool. So even the White House refers him to people to help improve their political speaking. It has an awesome book. It's called Mastering Communication at Work, and it's an international bestseller, and it's the top 50 business books in Asia, which is incredible because that's a lot of business books over there in Asia. It's been used at Harvard, Johns Hopkins, University of Texas, and many other schools. Today, we're going to talk about something that's really cool because while myself and a lot of listeners, they're not going to be going to Asia to speak, or they're not going to be speaking in front of large corporate events, but we are going to we are going to talk in front of people who are at B&I groups or Chamber of Commerce meetings, even introducing yourself like your 30-second elevator pitch or whatever you want to call it, because, that's cliche now. But so we're going to talk about how to gather your thoughts, organizing your thoughts in a fashion to where you sound like an expert, even though we know you're an expert in your industry. Sometimes when you start bumbling and rambling, people don't take you quite as seriously as they should. So with that being said, welcome to the show, Ethan.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be here. This is great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So can you give us a little bit about your history, your background, and your business in general?
Sure. This is a family business, and I started out having no interest in coming into the family business. My undergraduate in college was in communication, television, and film production. That's what I was studying. Cool. And then I came out and worked for a small production company, mostly driving the trucks and unloading the gear, and then being the assistant, learning. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun. And from there, I went into a business environment in the high-tech space.
Okay.
And I became a client of my mom and dad at this company that they had started in 1964. Oh, and there was a whole team of coaches that were specialists in speech communication. And that meant nothing to me. All I knew is I needed help on the job interview. Yeah. Dad, can you help me? But over the years, I grew in that company. It was great. And at a certain point, I came into the family business. Mm-hmm. And that was around 2001. And I very quickly fell in love with the work of helping others. And I changed my studies, my MBA and my PhD to be around psychology and communication. And what I do for the most part as a speech coach is I travel around the world. And well, not right now, I'm not, but travel around the world. If you're listening to this later, this is during the lockdown days. Yeah. But, and I work with folks and teams and groups and people on talking in two areas. One is to become comfortable around this whole business of communicating. And two is to be good at it, whatever that it happens to be. So that might mean standing up at like a B&I or a chamber meeting and talking about your business. It could be talking with an angry customer. And you have to diffuse that, or maybe giving feedback to an employee who's not performing, and that might not be easy for you. Yeah. So those are all the kinds of things that myself, and there's a whole team of us here, are all spread around the world, that we've all studied this, and this is what we do for a living, speech coaching.
Very cool. So you basically grew up listening to this. So it's not something like, so you kind of You have a one leg up on a lot of people, because like your entire life, I imagine you probably, your parents have said, we'll do this rather than that type thing. And so that's probably been very helpful for you.
Part of our life. I just assumed everybody was learning about speech articulation and
Right.
Aristotle's theories of persuasion, but no, not the case.
Yeah.
But so now we try to help others strengthen the way they talk.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because when I was growing up, I had a rather thick accent, and I've, since starting the podcast in 2017, I've, even a little bit before then, I was really trying to make sure that, even though I'm ignorant to a lot of things, but there's, especially our industry related things, I'm not as ignorant as some people may perceive with a super thick draw accent. And so I purposely pulled myself away from that. And there's a lot of people that will listen now and have no idea that I'm from South Georgia. And I mean, it comes out sometimes, the redneck comes out sometimes, but I try my best to make sure that I articulate properly, and that's, and things like that. Sometimes I get super excited and I start getting blah, 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 and, tongue tying. And then I realize that that's happening, and I'll slow myself back down. And I find that a lot at chamber events, whenever I'm getting excited about a product that this person needs, like, oh, this is the perfect product for you. And I start telling them about it, and I can start to see their eyes glaze over, and I'm like, okay, I need to roll this one back, because I'm not explaining this properly. It's just going over their head, and it's just, it's not being helpful for either one of us. We're wasting time. Let's get started with, how do I organize these thought processes? How does that even happen?
Yeah. When we look at a couple things in here, there are a couple things I think will be helpful for listeners. One is about organizing our thoughts, and the other is something you just said about articulation. Mm-hmm. And when we look at speech, you can break what comes out of the mouth. You can break it into voice and speech as two separate things. Your voice, you can't do a whole lot about. I mean, you can, if you've ever made a funny voice, right? Like, you can do it,
Yeah,
right? But to do that long-term takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. Well, professional actors can do that. Mm-hmm. But then again, they have nothing else to do all day.
That's their job.
Practice that, right? But most of us, voice, just take care of it. Your speech articulation, you can practice and learn. And it matters. It matters. People listen to the clarity of speech. Now, that's not so much accent. We found that accent becomes less of a distraction in the past maybe 15 to 20 years compared to before that. Because of Hollywood, movies, and YouTube, more people have been exposed to more accents. So it's not like, listen to that. I mean, right. It's cute. People hear it. But does it get in the way? That's the issue. And that's where the ability to be clear when you need to, like at a BNI meeting, like at a chamber, like talking with a customer, do you have the ability to turn it on or off? The clarity of speech. You don't have to be perfect with every single sound and that, right? But can you clean it up? It's hard to teach that in this format here, but I will share, there is an app that we released. It only works on iPhone. I'm sorry, but that's as far as we got technically. It's called Speech Companion. You can find it on the App Store. It's free app. Speech Companion. We originally created this for people we were already working with to do homework on their own, but you could download the app and learn. There's some great tools in there on speech articulation with examples. They used my voice. So you'll hear my family business. Yeah. You'll hear my voice do examples of certain sounds that if you practice those sounds, there are 8 of them. You'll clean your speech up like that. It's fantastic. Night and day difference. So good tools on that Speech Companion. All right. Organizing your thoughts. This you can do. I can teach you this. So if you're at let's say like a BNI meeting or something, I think BNIs give you, I think it's 45 seconds or something like that to do your range. Talk about yourself. Whatever it is, there is an outline that you can use, very easy to learn. And it's probably going to sound familiar because you may have learned versions of this, but we first introduced it in the 1960s, but we still teach it today. We call it the 4-step outline. Very easy, very effective. Goes like this. Step number 1 has 3 words in it. Tell what tell. This is the first thing you do in a speech, is you tell your listeners what you're going to be telling them about. So you might include things like, how long are you going to talk for? how many topics are you going to cover? Things like that might be in there. Any special instructions? That's number one. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Number two, tell why listen. This is a brief comment as to why they should hear you out. Why is it helpful for them to hear about this topic? Who cares that you're talking about it? And what's fascinating is even if they don't agree with your step two, maybe they don't like it, but they at least understand why you're doing it, which engages them. And sometimes you have more than one step two, one or two of them, because you have different people in the group. I'll give you an example of this in just a moment.
Okay.
Step three has one word, tell. That is the body of your presentation. That is the body of your speech. Most of your time is spent there.
Okay.
And then step number 4 has 3 words. Tell what told. This is a brief comment. It's a review. No, this is a review of what you've said. You go back and you restate your most important points. When you do step 4, tell what told, there are 2 parts. You repeat the most important points, and then you give an action, some call to action. What do you want your listeners to do? Should they go somewhere, click on something, call something? Or maybe it's just a soft action like consider. So I'd like you to consider that this is the most up-to-date information about our services. Considering is an action, right? Okay. So that's it. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them why they should listen. Tell them what you told them. Really easy. Let me try this. Let's try something here. Okay. I'll try to give you an example. Give me a topic, any subject in the world, doesn't matter. And I'll see if I can do this.
Any subject. How about this? Dealing with fear during the pandemic.
Okay. See if you can follow the 4 steps. Tell what tell why listen, tell what told. Okay. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk about dealing with fear during the pandemic. And this is going to be helpful for you because you may be experiencing fear and nervousness, or someone in your family, or maybe your customer is feeling it and you want to have an opportunity to help them feel a little bit better. There are 2 things in particular that you can think about and pay attention to that will help you in processing the fear. Number 1 is the amount of news that you hear. News media in general tends to emphasize the negative of whatever the topic is, and it can create what's known as the mean world syndrome, and then we become fearful. The second thing you can do is maybe propose other activities and focus on the things somebody can control, can do. Maybe they can clean their garage. They can work in the yard, right? What are some things they can do? So between focusing on how much news am I watching, can I turn that down, and then refocus on the things I can control that are kind of cool, these 2 things in mind will help lower the anxiety. So keep that in mind the next time that you're feeling anxious, or that maybe somebody comes to ask you or complains to you that they're feeling anxious. All right, I'm just making stuff up here.
That's really good. Like, I picked them out as you were doing
structure?
It. Yeah. And it's like, whenever you mentioned it, like when I was actively listening to it, I could pick it out. And it's like almost, it flowed. And then I'm thinking to myself, how many times I've heard great speakers that I'm just thinking like, oh yeah, I've heard them lay it out just like this. And it makes so much more sense.
We hear it, like if you watch TED Talks and things like that, this format that we introduced is really used all over the world. Step number 2 is often what people, that's what they miss. That's what you're hearing. Don't skip step 2. Sometimes you can combine steps 1 and 2 or reverse them. In a TED style talk, we might start with a story. And that story really is one big fat step 2. There's a reason to hear me because of that, But sometimes it's just plain and simple. Let me give you an example that's maybe more relevant to your listeners, right? Okay. So you might be talking to a customer. You might say something like, well, what I'd like to do is just take about 10 minutes to share with you the 4 things that I'm going to be doing for you on this project. There's step 1. And this is going to help make sure that you and I are on the same page, and it's going to give you a chance to ask me questions. Because if you don't hear something here, let's get ahead of that. There's step 2. And then I might go through the 3 steps. I'm going to do this on the project. I'm going to clean that. We're going to fix that, replace that. So those are the 4 things that I'm going to do on this project. Here's step 4. So do you have any questions, or does it make sense to you? That kind of a thing. So that might just be a different way to use the same approach. Not everything's a TED talk.
Right, right. Yeah. But it's really cool because even in a sales presentation, a lot of times I get stumbled and tripped up over words of like, all right, like, how do I structure this conversation? That's where I struggle the most in having this outline, this 4-step outline. I'm gonna try it, and I feel like so I've always been told that creating consistency in your sales process is what makes it. That's how you improve it and you get better and better. And I think that this as a basement, the base for that structure, I think is perfect. Honestly, it's especially the more you do it, the more it's going to flow and the more it's going to become natural.
Yeah. Mind if I jump topics for a quick moment? Because you just said something that inspired me.
Yeah.
On the selling side, we work with a lot of sales teams, right? But on the selling side, I would imagine for a lot of your listeners, I'm not a big fan of gimmicks, right?
Yeah.
Just in general, because there's a lot of them out there. And let's face it, nobody wants to be gimmicked,
Nope.
And people feel it.
They can pick it up quick.
So a couple quick things that can help you from a communication perspective there. Number one is listening. Really focus on listening. So what the customer is saying, if it's, let's say it's a landscaping job and they're talking about it, listen carefully to the language they use to describe the problem. Let me say that again, the language they use to describe the problem. A lot of times we hear the language, we know what it means because we deal with it every single day, and we change the wording to our wording, the way we listen to their language. And how, because that tells you a lot about how they view it, what they know, what they don't know, and how they see it. And take notes. Don't be so quick to jump in with, here's what I'm going to do for you. Hear them out. Then when it's time to talk back, use some of their vocabulary that they used. Okay. And it will resonate with them that you're saying, okay, well, you know how you said A, B, and C? Not only does that paraphrase technique, you know how you said this, we're going to go do these things. When you say that, you demonstrate that you were listening by doing that. And maybe even before you present your solution, you ask them a few more questions about it. Some of you may do this naturally. I might be preaching to the choir for something. I get that. I'm not, I get that. Yeah. But sometimes it's good to just hear it out loud. Listening is one of those strong skills, especially in the beginning, and especially if you have somebody who might be skeptical because maybe the last person in the industry that they worked with, the last plumber they worked with, ripped them off. Yep. Or the last landscaper one didn't do a good job. You can raise your game by having that professional listening skill set. Then when you go to present, even if you use the 4-step outline, you're going to be clear, organized, and what you say will resonate with them, as it should.
I like it. So one more topic that I'd like to discuss if we can before we get off of here. Working with a speech coach in general, is that something that's helpful for younger people, like kids? So my oldest is 11. He'll be 12. Mm-hmm. And he'll be 12 in a couple months. And I'm thinking back to whenever I was younger and I was terrified to get in front of class. Like I wouldn't read it whenever the teacher called on somebody to read. I definitely was not signing up for that task. And speaking in front of class was terrifying always. Like I was never that extrovert that was going to talk in front of the classroom. Would having someone like you work with children be beneficial, or is it something that the parents need to be doing, or how does that work?
You could. Most of our work is in the business world with professionals, grown-ups. I should just say grown-ups, people who have a job and so forth. Yeah. We do work with kids from time to time. We have clients who will ask, and people reach out to us, and we're pretty, family business. We're not going to say no. My parents always said, help people, and if they don't have the funding, we find a way to make it work. We're pretty relaxed with that. So if your kids need help, you can certainly reach out to us. There's a bunch of us that can help remotely these days with kids. Yeah. All right. And other than that, things you can do. First of all, yes, working with kids on public speaking is very helpful, but you got to be careful because the fear of public speaking tends to come from what we call caring adults That's usually what the age 2 or 3, when it's like, no, don't touch that, you know. And it's not to say don't say no to kids, but it's the first time in our life as a human we experience the concept of a consequence.
Yeah.
Usually young. So just sensitive to it. The second one is school. That tends to be the first time we experience or witness public humiliation. That could be anything from bullying to teasing to the teacher saying, no, you're wrong. Didn't you do the homework?
Good point.
So that's the second. The third one is television. There's a high amount of pressure to talk the way people talk on TV. And that's just not real life. It's fake. Actors, scripts, people, 8 people write this scripts for one actor. We just don't see it because it's behind the scenes. So then when I try to be that witty and I can't, it hits my psychology. TED Talks. I'm not a super fan of TED Talks. They're okay. They're cool. They're fun and all that. But they make us think that we have to talk that way. So these are some things that contribute, but you can help as a parent, encourage your kids to talk. If they don't get it right, let it go. You don't have to correct every single thing. What they need is repetition. Just like teaching a kid to throw a ball, the first time he throws it, you're probably not going to be correct, and he'll get your elbow up higher. You're probably going to let him do it a bunch of times. Then later you can come in and say, you know, it'll raise your game. You know, if he's shooting basketball, just let him throw bricks. And eventually you go over and say, aim with your elbow, you know. But if you do that on day one, the kid's going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But with kids, encourage them to speak in public, read books to them. Even if you're not a good reader, just let them experience that it will go into their confidence that will go later on. And
that's
look,
great. There that you just mentioned is just gold right there, because they can see us stumbling over words. And it's not like they're listening to Epic, which is their little book reading program where every fumble has been edited out.
That's right.
So they can hear us fumble over words and sound stuff out and like, wow, that's a weird word. I've never read that before. They can see that process, and then they can say, okay, he's human. He gets in front of people and talks.
That's right.
I can.
And the more they do it, they will naturally excel on their own. I mean, yes, speech coaches, we give tips and guidance just like a sports coach does. That's where my parents came up with the concept. Coach a business person the way an athlete's coached. But, you know, even I've coached a lot of youth sports with the kids, lacrosse, football, basketball, soccer, softball. And a lot of times, especially with the younger kids, let them go. Yeah. You know, don't micromanage. Listen, they ain't going to hike the ball the way you want. They're 6.
Exactly.
You know? But when they get that confidence, then as they get a little bit more confidence, you can now say, raise your hand higher, you know, and with public speaking, you can say, work on the articulation, right? And they can get it. They can get it, and that will carry them very far. And you can work with them. If you're not so good a speaker yourself and you're learn with your kids. Let them see that you're human, and you can learn together. You have a lot of fun and bond at the same time.
That's a really good
point. Then go do that BNI meeting, and you'll love it. It'll be great.
Yeah, exactly. How often – so I'm the president of the Small Business Chamber of Savannah, and there have been times where I've taken my kids there, and it's not a huge group of people. It might be 100 people. And like, is it good or bad to have them stand up and say, hey, my name is Memphis and that's my dad? Or should we say, you know, this is my son. He's here with me. He's off of school today, so I brought him along for the experience.
I wouldn't force it. Okay. I'd encourage it, ask them if they want to do it, but you got to be careful because sometimes these experiences can become permanent in the psychology of someone. And I don't mean to get all sort of like psychology on it, but a lot of the folks we deal with, when we go back, it goes back to something in the childhood that just they forgot about. Yeah. And it's not like somebody did something bad, like shame on you, but it's just something they experienced. Even big kids school, there are times I've argued with folks at Harvard, professors over there, I get into big arguments with, because they're like, well, in the business class, they'll have 50 kids and they have one kid stand up, and the teacher will try to teach the class that in the real world, you have to defend your point of view, which is a good thing. But if it goes well, everybody's great. If it does not go well, 50 kids learn a fear of speaking. And that's not okay. There are better ways to do it. So I would say invite them, let them see it's okay, encourage them a little bit. But if they're really freaking out about it, I wouldn't force it. They'll but keep inviting them, and eventually they'll stand up and do it.
Cool. That's really awesome. That's the philosophy that I have. And I think that's that's pretty much the direction that I've always gone. And I have some that are sheepish. I have 4 kids. Some of them they're sheepish, and then some of them are like the class clown. And he
I will
wants
say,
to
if
go.
you do it, some guidance would be after they're done. Just, you don't have to micromanage every single thing, right? It's kind of like with sports, right? You know, the kids that they don't play a good game. There's 2 kinds, right? They get in the car, and the mom or the dad, usually it's the dad, is just sitting there and just being like, you didn't do this, and you got to get in there, and you got it. And there might, and like as if the kid doesn't know that they were horrible, right? And it doesn't work. It's very ineffective, right? Some of the most successful kids that I've coached, and I've talked with their parents about it, they get in the car, and the dad just says something like, you know, man, I just love watching you play. Period. That's it.
That's
no
cool.
feedback. No feedback. You're not the coach, right? But as a parent, if they speak in public and it's not great, just be like, hey, man, that's great. I love seeing you get up there and give it a go. That's excellent. Just let them experience that.
I like it. Ethan, where can people learn more about you, getting connected with you?
Sure. You can find us, speechimprovement.com is the website. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Ethan Becker. My book, Mastering Communication at Work, How to Lead, Manage, and Influence, is anywhere you can buy a book.
Awesome.
Oh, you can email me. My email, Ethan, ETHAN, @speechimprovement.com. Feel free to reach out.
Cool. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing this with us. That's definitely some aha moments for sure. And for anybody that's listening or watching this episode, thank you for watching and sticking along with us to the end of the show. I don't know if you've noticed or not, I wear a True Tech Tools polo shirt. For anybody that's watching, that is the team over at True Tech Tools. They're not a sponsor of the podcast or anything, but they are some really awesome people. When it comes to the industries in general, in the service industries, I know very few vendors who have given back like True Tech Tools have. And if you need tools, whether it's Fieldpiece, the new manometers that just came out for HVAC guys, the Bluetooth manometers, they have all that awesome stuff. And you can even get a rebate. It's a discount code. It's Service Biz, and it's 8% off whenever you check out. But and all that, I mean, it doesn't come back to me or anything. It's just a discount for you. And I just really believe in those guys, True Tech Tools. They're really, really awesome people, and they really give back to the industry. And so if you're in the market for tools, check out True Tech Tools first. With that being said, thank you for listening and watching this episode. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Dr. Ethan. And my email is tersh@serviceemperor.com. So reach out to me or connect on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere that social media platform. I'm pretty much everywhere. But thank you again for coming on, watching the show, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a wonderful day.